Guys, welcome back to Bengals Tales. After this vid, I'm gonna start. I enjoy saying stupid stuff at the start of these videos, but I'm gonna push it to the end. So get ready for that. You don't have to suffer through a whole 30 seconds of me talking at the start before the book. Anyways, we're on chapter 4 of Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. So let's get started. We're on page 18. This is Sleepless Tales. Don't forget to like, comment, favorite, subscribe, and let's begin. You'll be finding enjoyment in a toothache next, you cry, with a laugh. Well, even in toothache there is enjoyment, I answer. I had toothache for a whole month, and no, there is. In that case, of course, people are not spiteful in silence, but moan. They are not candid moans. They're malignant moans. And the malignancy is the whole point. The enjoyment of the sufferer finds expression in those moans. If he did not feel enjoyment in them, he would not moan. It is a good example, gentlemen, and I will develop it. Those moans express in the first place all the aimlessness of your pain, which is so humiliating to your consciousness. The whole legal system of nature, on which you spit disdainfully, of course, but from which you suffer all the same, while she does not. They express the consciousness that you have no enemy to punish, that you have pain, the consciousness that in all spite of all possible Wagenheims, you are in complete slavery to your teeth, that if someone wishes it, your teeth will leave off aching, and if he does not, they will go on aching for another 3 months, and then that finally, if you're still contumacious and still protest, all that is left you for your own gratification is to thrash yourself, or beat your wall with your fist as hard as you can, and absolutely nothing more. Well, these mortal insults, these jeers on the part of someone unknown, end at last in an enjoyment which sometimes reaches the highest degree of voluptuousness. I ask you, gentlemen, listen. Sometimes to the moans of an educated man of the 19th century suffering from toothache, on the second and third day of the attack, when he's beginning to moan. Not as he moaned on the first day, that is, not simply because he has a toothache, not just as any coarse peasant, but as a man affected by progress and European civilization, a man who is divorced from the soil and the natural elements, as they express it nowadays. His moans become nasty, disgustingly malignant, and go on for whole days and nights. And of course, he knows himself that he is doing himself no sort of good with his moans. He knows better than anyone that he is only lacerating and harassing himself and others for nothing. He knows that even the audience before whom he is making his efforts and his whole family listen to him with loathing, do not put forth an inch of faith for him, and inwardly understand that he might moan differently, more simply, without trills and flourishes, and that he is only amusing himself like that from ill humor, from malignancy. Well, in all these recognitions and disgraces, it is that there lies a voluptuous pleasure, as though he would say, I'm worrying you, I'm lacerating your hearts, I'm keeping everyone in the house awake. Well, stay awake then. You, too, feel every minute that I have a toothache. I'm not a hero to you now, as I tried to seem before, but simply a nasty person, an imposter. Well, so be it then. I'm very glad that you see through me. It is nasty for you to hear my despicable moans. Well, let it be nasty. Here, I'll let you have a nastier flourish in a minute. You do not understand even now, gentlemen. No. It seems our development in our consciousness must go further to understand all the intricacies of this pleasure. You laugh, delighted. My jests, gentlemen, are of course in bad taste, jerky, involved and lacking self-confidence. But of course, that is because I do not respect myself. Can a man of perception respect himself at all? Chapter 5. Come. Can a man who attempts to find enjoyment in the very feeling of his own degradation possibly have a spark of respect for himself? I'm not saying this now from any mawkish kind of remorse, and indeed, I could never endure saying, "Oh, forgive me, Papa, I won't do it again." Not because I'm incapable of saying that. On the contrary, perhaps just because I'm too capable of it. And in what a way, too. As though of design, I used to get into trouble in cases when I was not to blame in any way. That was the nastiest part of it. At the same time, I was genuinely touched and penitent. I used to shed tears and, of course, deceived myself, though I was not acting in the least, and there was a sick feeling in my heart at the time. For that, one could not blame even the laws of nature, though the laws of nature have continually all my life offended me more than anything. It is loathsome to remember it all, but it was loathsome, even then. Of course, a minute or so later, I would realize wrathfully that it was all a lie, a revolting lie, an affected lie, that it is all penitence, this emotion, these vows to reform. You'll ask, why did I worry myself with such antics? And the answer, because it was very dull to sit with one's hands folded. And so, one began cutting capers. That is really it. Observe yourselves more carefully, gentlemen. Then you'll understand that it is so. I invented adventures for myself and made up a life, so as at least to give in some way. How many times it has happened to me, well, for instance, to take offense simply on purpose, for nothing. And one knows oneself, of course, that one is offended at nothing, that one is putting it on, but yet one brings oneself at last to the point of being really offended. All my life, I've had an impulse to play such pranks, so that, in the end, I could not control it in myself. Another time, twice in fact, I tried hard to be in love. I suffered too, gentlemen, I assure you. In the depth of my heart, there was no faith in my suffering, only a faint stir of mockery. And yet, I did suffer, and in the real orthodox way. I was jealous and beside myself, and it was all from the ennui, gentlemen, all from the ennui. Inertia overcame me. You know, the direct, legitimate fruit of consciousness is inertia. That is, conscious sitting with the hands folded. I've referred to this already, and I repeat with emphasis, all direct persons and men of action are active just because they are stupid and limited. How explain that? I'll tell you. In consequence of their limitations, they take immediate and secondary causes for primary ones, and in that way persuade themselves more quickly and easily than other people do. That they have found an infallible foundation for their activity, and their minds are at ease, and, that is the chief thing. To begin to act, you must first have your mind completely at ease, and no trace of doubt left in it. Why? How am I, for example, to set my mind at rest? Where are the primary causes on which I am to build? Where are my foundations? Where am I to get them from? I exercise myself in reflection, and consequently, with me, every primary cause at once draws after itself another, still more primary, and so on to infinity. That is just the essence of every sort of consciousness and reflection. It must be a case of the laws of nature again. What is the result of it in the end? Why, just the same. Remember, I spoke just now of vengeance. I'm sure you did not take it in. I said that a man revenges himself because he sees justice in it. Therefore, he has found a primary cause, that is, justice. And so he is at rest on all sides, and consequently he carries out his revenge calmly and successfully, being persuaded that he is doing a just and honest thing. But I see no justice in it. I find no sort of virtue in it either, and consequently, if I attempt to revenge myself, it is only out of spite. Spite, of course, might overcome everything, all my doubts, and so might serve quite successfully in place of a primary cause, precisely because it is not a cause. But what is to be done if I have not even spite? I began with that just now, In consequence again of those accursed laws of consciousness, anger in me is subject to chemical disintegration. You look into it. The object flies off into air. Your reasons evaporate. The criminal is not to be found. The wrong becomes not a wrong but a phantom, something like a toothache, for which no one is to blame. And consequently, there's only the same outlet left again. That is, to beat the wall as hard as you can. So you give it up with a wave of the hand because you have not found a fundamental cause. And try letting yourself be carried away by your feelings, blindly, without reflection, without a primary cause, repelling consciousness at last for a time, hate or love, if not only to sit with your hands folded. The day after tomorrow, at the latest, you'll begin despising yourself for having knowingly deceived yourself. Result, a soap bubble and inertia. Oh, gentlemen, do you know? Perhaps I consider myself an intelligent man, only because all my life I have been able neither to begin nor to finish anything. Granted, I am a babbler, a harmless, vexatious babbler like all of us, but what is to be done if the direct and sole vocation of every intelligent man is babble? That is, the intentional pouring of water through a sieve. Chapter 6. Oh, if I had done nothing simply from laziness. Heavens, how I should have respected myself then. I should have respected myself because I should at least have been capable of being lazy. There would at least have been the one quality, if it were, positive in me, in which I could have believed myself, and questioned, what is he? And the answer, a sluggard. How very pleasant it would have been to hear that of oneself. It would mean that I was positively defined. It would mean that there was something to say about me. Sluggard. Why, it is a calling, a vocation, it's a career. Do not jest it, it is so. I should then be a member of the best club by right, and should find my occupation in continually respecting myself. I knew a gentleman who prided himself all his life on being a connoisseur of Lafitte. He considered this as his positive virtue, and never doubted himself. He died, not simply with a tranquil, but with a triumphant conscience. He was quite right, too. Then I should have chosen a career for myself. I should have been a sluggard and a glutton, not a simple one, but, for instance, one with sympathies for everything sublime and beautiful. How do you like that? I have long had visions of it. That sublime and beautiful weighs heavily on my mind at 40. But that is at 40. Then it would have been different. I should have found for myself a form of activity in keeping with it, to be precise, drinking to the health of everything sublime and beautiful. I should have snatched at every opportunity to drop a tear into my glass and then to drain it all with this sublime and beautiful. I should then have turned everything into a sublime and the beautiful and the nastiest, unquestionable trash. I should have sought out the sublime and beautiful. I should have exuded tears like a wet sponge. An artist, for instance, paints a picture worthy of Gay. At once, I drink to the health of the artist who painted the picture worthy of Gay because I love all that is sublime and beautiful. An author has written, as you will. At once, I drink to the health of anyone you will because I love all that is sublime and beautiful. I should claim respect for doing so. I should persecute anyone who would not show me respect. I should live at ease and I should die with dignity. Why? It is charming, perfectly charming. And what a good round belly I should have grown. What a treble chin I should have established. What a ruby nose I should have colored for myself, so that everyone would have said, looking at me, here is an asset, here is something real, solid. And say what you like. It is very agreeable to hear such remarks about oneself in the negative age. Chapter 7. But these are golden dreams. Oh, tell me, Who was it first announced? Who was it first proclaimed that man only does nasty things because he does not know his own interests? And that, if he were enlightened, if his eyes were opened to his real, normal interests, man would at once cease to do nasty things, would at once become good and noble, because, being enlightened and understanding his real advantage, he would see his own advantage in the good and nothing else. And we all know that not one man can, consciously, act against his own interests. Consequently, so to say, through necessity, he would begin doing good. Oh, the babe, oh, the pure, innocent child. Why in the first place, when in all these thousands of years has there been a time when man has acted only from his own interest? What is to be done with the millions of facts that bear witness that men consciously, that is, fully understanding their real interests, have left them in the background and have rushed headlong in another path to meet peril, danger, compelled to this course by nobody, by nothing, and as it were, simply disliking the beaten track and having obstinatiously, willfully struck out another difficult, absurd way, seeking it almost in the darkness? So, I suppose, this obstinacy and perseverance were pleasanter to them than any advantage. Advantage? What is advantage? And will you take it upon yourself to define with perfect accuracy in what the advantage of man consists, and what, if it so happens that a man's advantage sometimes not only may, but even must, consist in his desiring in certain cases what is harmful to himself and not advantageous? And if so, if there can be such a case, the whole principle falls into dust. What do you think? Are there such cases? You laugh. Laugh away. Gentlemen, but only answer me. Have man's advantages been reckoned up with perfect certainty? Are there not some which not only have not been included, but cannot possibly be included under any classification? You see, you gentlemen have, to the best of my knowledge, taken your whole register of human advantages from the averages of statistical figures and politico-economical formulas. Your advantages are prosperity, wealth, freedom, peace, and so on, but so that any man who should, for instance, go openly and knowingly in opposition to all this list would be thinking, and indeed mine too, of course, be an obscurantist or an absolute madman. Would not he? But, you know, this is what is surprising. Why does it so happen that all these statisticians, sages, and lovers of humanity, when they reckon up human advantages, invariably leave out one? They don't even take it into their reckoning in the form in which it should be taken, and the whole reckoning depends upon that. It would be no greater matter. They would simply have to take it, this advantage, and add it to the list. But the trouble is that this strange advantage does not fall under any classification and is not in place in any list. I have a friend, for instance, gentlemen. But of course he is your friend too. And indeed there is no one to whom he is not a friend. When he prepares for any undertaking, this gentleman immediately explains to you, elegantly and clearly, exactly how he must in accordance with the laws of reason and truth. What is more, he will talk to you with excitement and passion of the true, normal interests of man. With irony, he will upbraid the short-sighted fools who do not understand their own interests, nor the true significance of virtue. And within a quarter of an hour, without any sudden outside provocation, but simply through something inside him which is stronger than all his interests, he'll go off on quite a different tack. That is, act in direct opposition to what he was just saying to himself, in opposition to the laws of reason, in opposition to his own advantage, in fact, in opposition to everything. I warn you that my friend is a compound personality, and therefore it is difficult to blame him as an individual. The fact is, gentlemen, it seems there must really exist something that is dearer to almost every man than his greatest advantages. Or, not to be illogical, there is a most advantageous advantage, the very one omitted of which we spoke just now, which is more important and more advantageous than all the other advantages, for the sake of which a man, if necessary, is ready to act in opposition to all his laws. That is, in opposition to reason, honor, peace, prosperity. In fact, in opposition to all those excellent and useful things, if only he can attain that fundamental, most advantageous advantage which is dearer to him than all. Yes, but it's advantage all the same, you will retort. But excuse me, I'll make the point clear. And it is not a case of playing upon words. What matters is that this advantage is remarkable from the very fact that it breaks down all our classifications and continually shatters every system constructed by lovers of mankind for the benefit of mankind. In fact, it upsets everything. But before I mention this advantage to you, I want to compromise myself personally, and therefore I boldly declare that all these fine systems, all these theories for explaining to mankind their real, normal interests, in order that inevitably striving to pursue these interests may at once become good and noble, are in my opinion, so far, mere logical exercises. Yes, logical exercises. Why, to maintain this theory of the regeneration of mankind by means of the pursuit of his own advantage is, to my mind, almost the same thing as to affirm, for instance, following Buckle, that through civilization mankind becomes softer, and consequently less bloodthirsty and less fitted for warfare. Logically, it does seem to follow from his arguments. But man has such a predilection for systems and abstract deductions that he is ready to distort the truth intentionally. He is ready to deny the evidence of his senses only to justify his logic. I take this example because it is the most glaring instance of it. Only look about you. Blood is being split in streams, and in the merriest way, as though it were champagne. Take the whole of the 19th century in which Buckle lived. Take Napoleon, the Great and the present one. Take North America, the eternal union. Take the farce of Schleswig-Holstein. And what is that civilization softens in us? The only gain of civilization for mankind is the greater capacity for variety of sensations and absolutely nothing more. And through the development of this many-sidedness, man may come to find enjoyment in bloodshed. In fact, this has already happened to him. Have you noticed that it is the most civilized gentlemen who have been the subtlest slaughterers, to whom the Attilas and the Stanka Razins could not hold a candle? And if they are not as conspicuous as the Attilas and the Stanka Razins, it is simply because they are so often met with, are so ordinary, and have become so familiar to us. In any case, civilization has made mankind, if not more bloodthirsty, at least more vilely, more loathsomely bloodthirsty. In old days, he saw justice in bloodshed, and with his conscience at peace exterminated those he thought proper. Now, we do think bloodshed abominable, and yet we engage in this abomination, and with more energy than ever. Which is worse? Decide that for yourselves. They say that Cleopatra, excuse an instance from Roman history, was fond of sticking gold pins into her slave girls' breasts and derived gratification from their screams and writhings. You'll say that that was in comparatively barbarous times, that these are barbarous times too, because also, comparatively speaking, pins are stuck in even now. That, though, man has now learned to see more clearly than in barbarous ages. He is still far from having learnt to act as reason and science would dictate. And yet, you're fully convinced that he will be sure to learn when he gets rid of certain old bad habits, and when common sense and science have completely re-educated human nature and turned it into normal direction. You're confident that then man will cease from intentional error and will, so to say, be compelled not to want to set his will against his normal interests. That is not all. Then you say, science itself will teach man that in my mind it's a superfluous luxury, that he never really had any caprice or will of his own, and that he himself is something of the nature of a piano key or the stop of an organ, that there are, besides, things called laws of nature, so that everything he does is not done by his willing it, but is done of itself, by the laws of nature. Consequently, we have only to discover these laws of nature, and man will no longer have to answer for his actions, and life will become exceedingly easy for him. All human actions will then, of course, be tabulated according to these laws, mathematically, like the tables of logarithms up to 108,000, and entered in an index. Or, better still, there be published certain edifying works of the nature of encyclopedic lexicons, in which everything will be so clearly calculated and explained that there will be no more incidents or adventures in the world. Then, this is all what you say. New economic relations will be established, already made and worked out with mathematical exactitude, so that every possible question will vanish in the twinkling of an eye, simply because every possible answer to it will be provided. Then, the palace of crystal will be built. Then, in fact, those will be halcyon days. Of course, there's no guaranteeing, and this is my comment, that it will not be, for instance, frightfully dull, then. For what will have one to do when everything will be calculated and tabulated? But, on the other hand, everything will be extraordinarily rational. Of course, boredom may lead you to anything. It is boredom sets one sticking golden pins into people. But all this would not matter. What is bad, and this is my comment again, is that I dare say people will be thankful for the gold pins then. Man is stupid, phenomenally stupid. Or rather, he is not at all stupid, but he is so ungrateful that you could not find another like him in all creation. I, for instance, would not be in the least surprised if all of a sudden, apropos of nothing, in the midst of general prosperity, a gentleman with an ignoble, or rather with a reactionary and ironical countenance, were to arise, and putting his arms akimbo, say to us all,
I say, gentlemen, hadn't we better kick over the whole show and scatter rationalism to the winds, simply to send these logarithms to the devil and to enable us to live once more at our own sweet, foolish will?
That again would not matter. What is annoying is that we would be sure to find followers. Such is the nature of man, and all that for the most foolish reason, which one would think was hardly worth mentioning. That is, that man everywhere, and at all times, whoever he may be, has preferred to act as he chose, and not in the least as his reason and advantage dictated. And one may choose what is contrary to one's own interests, and sometimes one positively ought, and that is my idea. One's own free unfettered choice, one's own caprice, however wild it may be, one's own fancy, worked up at times to frenzy, is that very most advantageous advantage which we have overlooked, which comes under no classification, and against which all systems and theories are continually being shattered to atoms. And how do these wiseacres know that man wants a normal, virtuous choice? What has made them conceive that a man must want a rationally advantageous choice? What man wants is simply an independent choice, whatever that independence may cost, and wherever it may lead. And choice, of course. The devil only knows what choice. And that is the end of part 2 of our reading, folks. We'll be continuing on chapter 8. Thank you for joining me. like to say, did I already say this, guys? Thank you so much for your continued support of the channel. It means so much to me. You have no idea. I hope that you find value in these videos, because that is the only thing that I hope to provide right now. I hope it helps you with your homework. I hope it helps you fall asleep. I hope you enjoy them. I like when you leave friendly comments in the comments. Also, hey, this is Sleepless Tales. Don't forget to like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you have any things you'd like me to read in the future, please put it in the comments. Put it in the comments, guys. I love that. If you give me a book recommendation, I'll heart your comment if I remember, unless it's like 10 years from now and I forget. But ignoring that, hope you're doing good. I love you as always. Don't forget. Thank you for joining me. If you're a new subscriber, if you're a new viewer, hey, welcome to Sleepless Tales, man. What's up? Yep, that's about it. This we are maybe a fifth of the way through the book. This is probably going to be a like 8-part series then. I don't know. Anyways, looking forward to hearing back from you soon, and thank you again for watching my content. There's been a big uptick in subscribers recently. I mean, we're at like 25, which that's a lot to me. I think that's a lot. So, anyways, have a great night. Goodbye.